principles of mathematically perfected economy must allow likewise to be converted into immediate further circulation of promissory notes, obligating respective debtors thereafter to pay off the equity at the rate of consumption or depreciation of the related property or principal. 1A.1. This capacity to immediately convert equity into circulation, together with an existent circulation representing all unpaid equity, therefore comprises an effective circulation which at all times can sustain trade of all property all at once. 1A.2. Nothing less than such an effective currency can sustain trade of all wealth all at once, nor can any lesser circulation preserve a state of just reward to all producers for the remaining value of their production. 1b. An actual remaining circulation must be established, therefore, which is equal to the remaining value of all property financed under mathematically perfected economy, that the further goals of an effective circulation equal to the remaining value of all property can be established by financing existent unindebted equity. 1b.1. The actual circulation, therefore, shall at all times equal remaining indebtedness with the capacity to immediately convert unindebted equity into further circulation, comprising an effective circulation which at all times will sustain transfer of all property at once and representation of just reward for production. 1b.2. And this principle shall dictate how much further circulation shall be introduced to establish a just, initial, sustainable state by crediting accounts of the people. One C. The only just means of sustaining a prosperous populace in retirement is to preserve from their earnings so much as sustains their state of prosperity across retired years, from obligatory savings accumulated over employed years, because to take from the general pool of wealth otherwise deprives others of just reward for their contribution to production. 1C1 then. Furthermore, a just initial actual circulation cannot be established by crediting a damaged populace for interest and principal paid, which credit exceeds full payment of the principal or of represented property, because the excess would comprise actual circulation with a relative circulation exceeding the remaining obligation, which would violate our principle of an actual circulation equal to the remaining balance of the outstanding debt, if any. Thus, damages to each case of indebtedness beyond the remaining value of represented property cannot be restored to the case of damage without violating essential principles, and the upper limit of restoration of damages, therefore, shall be to credit every debtor for principal and interest paid toward outstanding debts of principal only, up to full payment for the represented property. D. Thus, as restoration of destroyed savings is the only plausible vehicle for restoring an actual circulation equal to remaining monetary obligations, damages to the subjects of pretended economy are to be repaired to whatever practical extent by restoring to the accounts of people of at least working age so much as they may have saved during working life, less what what they would have spent during retired life. 2. In the interest of justice, in other words, if I may back up to that, what we're doing is replacing a broken Social Security system at no cost to ourselves. And we're using this necessary reparation to create an initial sustainable state which is independent of any need for any such social program. 2. In the interests of justice and simplification, as we have already paid excessively for public assets, and as public debt is unlawfully and unjustifiably comprised likewise of irredeemable promises to pay, public debt is to be written off formally by issuing an infinite, irredeemable promise to pay to the purported banking system. 3. In our common interest of preserving the prosperity of foreign suppliers and markets, and in relieving foreign neighbors of the same injustices, purported foreign debt is to be forgiven. Section 8. Crimes of disinformation. This relates, of course, to absolute consensual representation. 1. It shall be a severe criminal transgression of this act for government, A. To disinform the people of potential or pretended success or failure of any existent or advocated government program or act. Severe criminal transgression, as it should be. B. To withhold vital information from the public, or to know of such disinformation without making reasonably immediate and practical attempts to expose evident government crimes, disinformation, or withholding of vital information, in every case of which the judicial branches of government must prosecute the alleged perpetrators thereof. C. For any public, it shall be a severe criminal transgression of this act for government. C. For any public law or action to stand beyond reasonable demonstration of its faults, miscarriages, or basis in disinformation, as of course the Federal Reserve and Federal Reserve Act stand to this very day for 100 years of abuse of power. D. It shall be a severe criminal transgression of this act to knowingly promote disinformation for the purposes of passing or sustaining any public act, or A. D.A. to spend public funds to do so. E. It shall be a severe criminal transgression of this act for government at any time or to any degree by intention or by reasonably foreseeable, rectifiable, and expressed potentials for neglect of these responsibilities, to fail to provide and maintain readily accessible and navigable conduits for immediate public registry and dissemination of alleged government offenses, for government accountability to legitimate claims made, and for public organization to preserve inviolable interests. 1E-A, for any officer, subordinate, or agent of government to knowingly fail to raise such potential neglects of responsibility to such obligatory agencies. 1E-B, for any officer or agent of government to refuse or to fail to document or respond to any reasonable potential case of neglected responsibilities raised by the public. And 1EC, to prevent, obstruct, or even impede the people from recording any and all public government business. 2. Any citizen knowing of a government crime, therefore, shall likewise be required to report the crime and relevant evidence to responsible government agencies. A. Which agencies, shall they not sufficiently investigate or prosecute legitimate allegations, shall be guilty of severe criminal transgression of this act. And B. Which citizens, shall they know and fail to report such crimes to responsible agencies, shall be legal accessories to the crimes. 3. To knowingly, falsely accuse officers or agents of the government of criminal activity shall be a criminal transgression of this act. In other words, it's a two-way street. You cannot falsely accuse so that we are all absorbed in, watching and uncovering, whatever corruption may or may not exist. 3. To knowingly falsely accuse officers or agent of the government of criminal activity shall be a criminal transgression of this act. A. No accusation shall be prosecuted against the government without either wholly convincing and plausible argument or actual material evidence of transgression. And 3A1. Every case of which must be prosecuted upon due body of evidence. Section 9. Obligation to teach critical, accountable, and independent thinking as absolute responsibilities of consensual government. As the inherent purposes and obligations of a responsible, self-ruling populace include teaching and reinforcing critical, accountable, and independent thinking, teaching restraint and perfection of assertion, and advocating nothing less than ideals. Therefore, failure of the government to provide and to sustain quality means of teaching these principles to all citizens shall be criminal transgression of this act. In our final section, Section 10, unlawful transgression, perpetuity, bearing. 1. This act shall become effective for all citizens upon approval of no less than 2/3 of the citizens of no less than 2/3 of the states or the country. It shall be effective nonetheless for the case of each signing individual immediately upon registration of their signature. 1A. As its passage pertains most severely to the potential future of younger generations, any person of any age claiming to sufficiently understand this mandate may sign and claim its rights. The aforesaid restriction of voting age applies to count, not to exclusion. 1B. No affirmation by any other ostensibly existing authority shall apply or be required. We the people are prescribing the law. 1C. No authority shall have any power but to comply. That's very important. We're not giving